Well, in terms of achievements, I think one of the biggest achievements that I did was a bit late in life, really, I've got to say, was my master's in education, because that was kind of like the basis of where my community work was around education, and setting up of the 3A's parent support group with Mumba Kafula, and with a lot of help within that from a lot of people, including people like Judy Craven, Irving Williams, Donna Higgins. But that was kind of like something that was very much needed at the time, because a lot of children were being excluded from school. Nothing's changed, but it was really at proportionate levels at that time, and I had my own personal experience with my own son, which is where the group kind of like formulated from. I've also helped to set up the local radio station that we now have as Legacy Radio. It started off as Peace FM, was one of the founder directors of that, campaigned and worked hard to get that radio station a voice for black people in the community, and another way for women to get their voices across as well, in terms of various programs and looking at women's issues, menopause, health, etc. So a great, one of my biggest achievements, I think. We recently started a women's group, Women of Worth, which kind of like looks at empowering women, even though that group kind of like represents women who have been through domestic violence, domestic abuse. But we don't want to focus on that. It's more focused on now how you empower these women to become independent and to make kind of informed choices for themselves and be able to sustain themselves, because a lot of them stay in these relationships because they can't financially look after themselves. And what we're discovering is that they've got skills, whether it be plaiting hair, baking cakes, you know, childminding, that they can use to make income so that they can become independent. Because I've met some absolutely fabulous women, and I did that, sharing my own experience of domestic abuse, and it kind of like got 5,500 hits on Facebook alone, and I got women from across the globe getting in contact, either just to say well done, or I'm going through that, or I've been through that, you know. So it just kind of showed me that this was kind of needed, and my focus then moved from education of young black males, which is where I always kind of felt my kind of niche was, into the empowerment of women. I started my youth work when I came out of uni in 1988, and I got a job at Proctor's, deputy leader there, focusing on women and girls, believe it or not, all that way back when. And I was there for about 6 months, and the only reason I only stayed 6 months because the opening came up at Hideaway, the Hideaway Youth Project, which was a full-time role, and it was the woman's worker. So I just thought, it's, you know, brand new project, go and get your teeth into that. And because I'd grew up in the Hideaway, so I used to truant school, and I'd be in the Hideaway, and there were some great female workers there that influenced my life. There was a woman called Tina, there was Rose Henry, who was my youth worker. So I just thought, get back into Hideaway and go and give something back to, you know, like what you've had. So, and that's where my youth work career kind of started. Prior to that, or very early on in that, I was taken along with Irving, Tony Gordon, Pauline Weir, who worked at Proctor's for a long time, taken down to London to meet the then Home Secretary, which was William Whitelaw, to challenge him about what he was doing, about what was happening in Moss Side in the 80s. I mean, so for all that time ago, things were still not good for black people in inner city Manchester. So we were given that privilege of going with the likes of Louise and Ella Edwards and Hartley Hanley, and we went down, sat round. I remember being sat round this, which seemed at the time like an enormous table, and not even fully understanding
the depth and gravity
of what I was doing, not at all, and how much it would influence my career and my life. Because after that I came back and was really into this campaigning and really into trying to make things better for black people. Yeah. My own mum was very much involved, and that's kind of like how I got to know Mrs. Da-Cocodia, because they're both nurses, and you know, they had the Jamaica Society, which still goes on today, And I used to get dragged along to these meetings every 4 weeks with my mum, or we'd go to Christmas parties where they'd get everyone together, all the women together, they'd cook and we'd all have a big Christmas dinner, which was really, really good, which is where I met a lot of people who I kind of like have a strong foundation with now, because we all came up through Carmore Road, and these women, someone would cook the turkey, someone would do the roast potatoes, and I mean the place would be packed. We'd have Father Christmas, and when I got older and got involved, we turned that into Prince. I can't remember what we called him, but he wasn't Father Christmas anyway, because we'd moved on a little bit from then. But yeah, that was the kind of like foundation, watching these women and looking at their passion and looking at their drive, and you know, that seeing that we can have access to these influential people to try and make a difference. You know what I mean? They kind of brought it into reality, sitting in meetings with the leaders of this and the leaders of that, and these people listening to these women and men at the time. But it was predominantly, as always, for some reason, women. I'm very lastminute.com, so if I know an assignment's got to be in a month, I'll be doing it the night before. But one of the things that drove me to finish that Masters was when I went for, and this is just the racism again that we face on a daily basis, when I went for the interview to get on that course, the tutor had said to me, "Do you think you've gone in over your head?" Now, I hadn't really, and I looked at it and I thought, But that little seed of doubt was planted in there, and I remember thinking, have I gone in over my head? Can I do this? Can I? And I remember being sat in the lectures sometimes, and always just that one little sentence that she said was in my head. I remember once texting Irving and thinking, I don't understand what they're saying. I said, I think I can't cope with this. Explain this to me. And I was texting him all the time through my lectures, and I had a friend, an Irish girl called Donna, and she said to me, you can write this course, never mind do this course. And it was one by one, everyone started dropping out, and I'm thinking, you're not dropping, you are not dropping, you're going to prove that woman wrong. And in the end, only 2 of us completed that Masters, I've got to say. So for me, that was a big achievement for me, because I wanted to give up so many times. I didn't have time to be reading, I was working full time, got the children, got all what's going on within work, etc. But just because she'd said that, yeah, I thought, I've got to prove you wrong. And I'm thinking, how many times do our young people get one negative little word put in a very sly and it was very nice, it was very, the way it was put, but it just dropped that seed. I think they call it micro something, I can't remember what it is, but it just kind of like, and I thought, you've got to prove to those young people behind who you keep telling, get your head down, get your education, etc. How can you go and speak to them if you drop out of this course? So that was one of my driving forces behind that. Many people listening will know that when you work in your community, and I've no doubt it probably happens in other communities, but I can only speak of the community that I've been around, and I found that it's very dog eat dog out there. It's very much this egoistical thing whereby, you're out there trying to do good for the community, but you're constantly being just fought down by your own people who you're there trying to impact and trying to help. And I put it down to this thing is, black people have come from this mentality of, we've never had, and we haven't got anything, so when anything comes along, everyone just fights and wants to get this thing, as opposed to having a strategic plan. What they've got to understand is, if somebody comes and dangles a little carrot here of about £20,000, we have this mentality of, because we have no concept about what money really is, £20,000, like, oh my God, we've got to put a plan together to make sure that no one else ever gets a part of that. But what they don't understand is that they've dangled that £20,000, but they've got a budget for the next 50 years of how many billions. And so while we're fighting for the little 20,000, there are communities that have realised that, hang on, that's chicken feed. We don't even leave them there to be fighting for that. And they're going on and getting real money in to impact lives in a massive way. So we're not kind of impacting our communities because we're so busy fighting. So I kind of just thought, you know what? It comes a point where you've got to say, step away. Because when you're trying to change your community, when you're trying to empower them, if they don't want to be empowered and it's kind of wearing you down, you've got to then think, of yourself. Yes, of course. Selfish. And
that's not selfish, that's preservation, because you're
self-preservation, isn't it, really? And I decided to just step away from all that, and I gave up things that I was truly passionate about, things that I really loved. I was hanging on for dear life, but these things were destroying me. And in the end, I let go. I'm letting go. I mean, radio. I loved radio, whether it be presenting or going and talking in meetings to try and get funding in, etc., etc. It was a passion of mine, but I let it go because it was just not feasible and people were not getting it. They were just seeing the here and now, but not looking at the long-term strategic thing. The radio for me is, that's a massive resource that this community could have. That can create jobs for young people. Our young people shouldn't be going cap in hand to anybody else for jobs. They should be coming and we're saying, right, okay, we've got a production role here, we've got this here, apprenticeship in this. But because we weren't seeing that bigger picture, we were just excited, they've given us a radio station. No, you've got to start thinking long term and strategic. So there was all that kind of stuff going on. And I just thought sometimes you've just got to step away. It's like a boomerang effect. You throw your boomerang and if it's for you, it comes back. If not, just walk away from it. And this entrepreneurship and the Women of Worth just kind of landed, and completely different from what I've ever done. But I said to myself, okay, it's a new door, it's a new direction. Everything I believe happens for a reason. You've done all that you can do there. It's time to move on. And this just came and I've never been into entrepreneurship, I've never been into business, I've never done anything like that, but this has just given me that kind of empowerment that I need. And I've had so much support and so much kind of like upliftment from women across the globe. And I've got to say, a lot of women from outside of my community. And I'm thinking that is quite sad that I've had to come outside of my community to recognise that there are women that want to empower women. You know, so I'd like to bring that back and have women here in our communities empowering each other. And I do try and share with them what I'm doing and how they can do the same. But again, it's breaking that kind of mindset. It's just, you know, we're just used to, we've been trained from school, 9 to 5, that's it. Go and find yourself a job in here or there. Be somebody who's running around behind somebody else, but never live your own dream. But for me, I've discovered you can live your own dream. You don't have to star in somebody else's. You've got to live your own and be the star of your own dream. So that's what I'm about now. Very big on that was the Abyssindi Cooperative, which did a lot, you know, for women. And that just kind of fizzled. That was a very powerful movement. So it's about getting things like that back where women, you know, value and kind of like see the need, because we're the backbone of everything. We are the backbone of everything. You know, and if we go down, believe it or not, everything's going down. So we have to be, we can't kind of get into that egoistical thing. We just cannot. We've got to leave that. It doesn't matter if I don't like you. I didn't come here to like you. It does not matter. What matters is that we see a vision for our children and our children's children, because I'm thinking, what am I going to be leaving for what is it going to be like for my children? So I had to struggle and I'm still struggling to make sure that I bought a house for them, so if anything happens when they come over, the government come in and say, right, you're not having our flats and my children will have somewhere to lay their head. And I can close my eyes and know that I've done that a little bit for my children. They can, and I would encourage them to try and get another property and another one so that nobody can say, you'll never sleep anywhere. What we need to stop doing is putting each other down, and that's where the problem is. The moment we see that actually, if we work collectively, that is a power. The minute we recognise that, it doesn't matter what anybody else comes with, because there is an expectation that we're always going to get that. It's how you deal with that. And if you're working together, you combat that, and we're unstoppable. And if we're empowered, then our men become empowered. And then we stand, and there's a fear then. Do you know what I mean? And so it's in their interest that they divide us. You know, and we've got to stop falling into those little traps of division and recognising that £20,000 is not a lot of money. It's nothing. And to realise we want the bigger vision, keep your £20,000, but we're going over here, we're working collectively together, we're not leaving anyone behind, and we are going for that amount to do this, because we can get £20,000 here and £20,000 there, but then it has no impact. Where's the impact? They've been, we've been running projects ever since I can remember in this community.
Louise Da-Cocodia, the high
Exactly.
powerhouse.
All those, we've been running them, but there's nothing of impact. What have we really left behind? What is here that we can say, yes? I can think of two projects I think about that were run by two very powerful women, and that one of them is POPs, that was Farida Anderson, and at the time it was called BHAP, the Black HIV and AIDS Forum, with Evelyn and Priscilla, and those two projects have gone on to become national projects, you know, and that's because these two women had drive and vision, and they didn't kind of like get involved in all that egoistical stuff. They just knew their vision and moved with it. And we need to take a lesson from that, because it shows me that it can be done. It can be done. These women have created two great services that impact on our lives. They've done it at a time when other people were sat bickering over £20,000. Do you know what I mean? Because there are so many women who are doing so much, and you probably wouldn't even know unless you did a project like this, and you may be interviewing somebody who may mention someone you've never even heard of, but who's doing something quite fantastic. So I think it's great at unleashing that and bringing all those women together, and to look at the power that is the power base, and instead of fearing, to teach them to embrace and to look at where this can go next, because we can do projects upon project upon project, but if they're not going to do anything that is sustainable, what is the point? Yeah, they'll get a recognition for a day or so, etc., but then what happens after that? So it's about creating something that is so sustainable, that is long lasting, that can be built upon, maybe kind of birthing the Abyssindi cooperative, that kind of a thing, so that women can empower each other and be self-reliant.
That's right.
You know, I've met so many women over the last few years in terms of setting up Women of Worth who are stuck in relationships or in places they don't want to be because they can't move, because financially they can't sustain themselves. But if we can think of ways in which women can sustain themselves and use the skills that they have and what they enjoy to make a living, and that can fit in around their children and their home lives, how powerful would that be? What I'm doing now, it's called the Opportunity Company, and basically we sell high-end health products, so from vitamins, minerals, clean water, teeth whitening, even fresh air, believe it or not. This company has it, slimming product, weight management products, and everything is 100% natural, because one of the things that I've kind of been researching of late is the foods that we're eating, the chemicals we're putting on our skin, the link between women relaxing their hair and getting fibroids, and all these kind of things that we've been just systematically given all the time and not realising that it's damaging our health. It's how to reverse that. And what I've learned is that the body has the ability to heal itself with the right components. So whether you've got IBS, high blood pressure, sickle, lupus, cholesterol, there's a product that we have that will absolutely zap that and get your body working in harmony with itself. If it's weight loss that you need because you're diabetic, the product that will do that. And again, it's all natural. So basically, if we were back home in our countries where we wouldn't be taking paracetamol and ibuprofen and then needing something else because that's wearing out the line of your stomach, and then needing something else because that, you wouldn't need any of that. There'd be a bush outside that you'd grow, you'd go and pick and boil and drink or rub or whatever. And it's getting back to that level of basicness. When I was growing up, I couldn't have been disrespectful to Louise Da-Cocodia, to Judy Craven, because my mum would have known about it, and it would have been over. These days, they don't care, they don't, you know what I mean? But that's partly because we don't kind of like have those family gatherings, again, like I mentioned to you earlier about when we used to meet at Carmel Road at Christmas, that was a highlight of our year, that for our, because all the family came and you met all the other families, and so you build that relationship and there's that level of respect there, and almost that transition, you know, you go from being the child on the stage sat on Father Christmas's knee to somebody who's helping to serve, and then you're doing the cooking and serving the elders, and you know, and I got involved in the Jamaica Society, one of the youngest people in there at the time, but it was such a pleasure to kind of like be in there amongst those people that I'd seen as a child and now working with them. And I remember finding it very difficult to say hi Joy or hi Charlie. They'd be saying, oh, don't call me uncle, don't call me, just call. But because you'd grown up, it was so, but you know, we need to bring that back where your children know who everybody is. And oh, that's such and such is, oh hi, you know, so that level of respect is there. We've lost it, we've lost the plot. And it's about getting what's going on around us and going back to what we knew and know should be. No, just really, I think like it's very good that this is happening. And like I said before, I think it has to be something that amounts to something that's going to lead to something that is solid and sustainable and that everybody else can benefit from, not just for a week or 2 weeks, but a lifetime if possible, or as a foundation to build upon. And that for women to start embracing women, and we've got the Women of Worth, which will be launching properly early in the year 2018. It's to get as many women as possible affiliated to that group. We've got a page on Facebook which is Women of Worth Empowerment, but just getting as many women to affiliate to that as possible, to look at how we can join forces with women across the globe to empower and begin to build. Heroes and Sheroes, it's funny, it came about in a very funny way. Whilst I was doing my masters, I kind of like was working with a group of young men, young black men, because my masters was around education and the failure of young black men and their experiences in the British education system. So I was kind of like, and I'd worked in a couple of schools in Manchester and working with the disaffected, hard to reach young people. And these young men that I was given to work with, they weren't coming into school. I had to go and pick them up from home, get them dressed, put their weed out and all that kind of, come on, get in the car, you're coming with me. These children, the teachers did not want them in the classroom. And one more, I was invited one morning to follow them to the gym. And I went down to the gym and there was a guy in there who'd been doing this training for years and years and years and years in the back of Moss Side Gym. I call it the dark room. I'm going to write a book about it because it's right at the back, out of sight, and when I went in there was all this masculine energy in there. But these very same boys who the schools couldn't control, I was in there at 6. I watched them coming in that building at 6 o'clock in the morning, saying hello to, you know, the person who was training them, Barnsley, big up Barnsley. And there were fragments of guys from this area and that area. But they knew when they came in that gym, them postcodes and all that gang warfare, it didn't exist. And here were guys just wanting to build their muscles and working together. And I was like, my goodness me, who does this? People are being paid thousands of pounds a month to work with these young people. But here was this man who'd been doing this for years and nobody knew about him. And I remember one young man in particular who, he was a nightmare at school, and he'd finished his training and he was putting his coat on to go, and Barnsley said to him, you've not done that set over there. Now if he was at school and the teacher said you've not finished that, he'd have probably threw the table at the teacher, but he took his coat off, did his set and said, can I go now? And I was like, whoa. So that featured in my dissertation, you know, and I thought, how many other people are out there that are doing work that is so significant in this community that nobody knows about?
No recognition. Mm-hmm.
And then I went to the funeral of Sam White. I think people call him Masori, yeah? And when I knew of Sam, because he was there when I first started to get into youth work, when I first started being with Mrs. Edwards and Louise, etc. And I knew what he had done, but not to the extent. And it was only at his funeral I was sat there like, oh my gosh, he's done all this. And then you hear the story of how he ended up in prison. And I thought, and where were all those people that he'd helped at that time when he was in prison? We weren't there. you know, and yet still there are thousands of people walking around because he did a lot in immigration. And there are lots of people who were in Manchester walking around because of him. But then he almost died in isolation. No one knew, you know, and he became very ill when he came out and passed away. So it just made me think, we need to do something and recognise and acknowledge people in life as opposed to shedding 100 tears or hearing about somebody at a funeral. Yeah. So that's where Heroes and Sheroes was born. So we decided we were going to recognise those silent heroes and those silent sheroes in the community that had they not been there, life might be a little bit different. Because I know if them boys were not being worked with in that gym in the morning, there was a level of respect that they had for the people who were trained. So if they were out and that person was there that trains them, they knew they couldn't misbehave in any way. And it's an impact, but no one knew. So it's bringing them to and giving them a little bit of shine. Some of them don't want that shine, but it's about acknowledging and recognising them. So we put on a dinner and dance and recognise the heroes. And at the same time, we raised funds for a cause that is dear to my heart, which was sickle. And there's a new group that we formed called Sickle Cell Care Manchester that works at a grassroots level with those who live with sickle in the community. So it kind of everything tied in together really. So recognising the unsung heroes and raising funds and awareness for sickle. And it's something we've done every year. This year, it was our 5th year. So I'm taking a break next year and it'll be coming back bigger and better in 2019. We've got a Facebook page, Heroes and Sheroes, or www.heroesandsheroes.org.uk, I think it is, yeah. So they can go and then have a look. And like I said, we'll be back in 2019, changing it up a little bit, you know, and hopefully making it bigger. And because sometimes we're afraid to think big, aren't we? So that's where we're going next.
Expanding and growing.
Yeah, absolutely. So that those who are recognised on that night will feel and know that they are special. Because when you give your time to a community for nothing and sometimes not appreciated, it's nice to know that actually someone recognises what I'm doing.